Welcome to the Show Me Casey Schools podcast. I am Nina, the Director of Programs and Events. Thank you for tuning in for another episode. Today, I am joined by some amazing Kansas City advocates. We have Dr. Julie Holland with Parent Leadership Training Institute and Rebecca Williams with Parent Power Lab. How are you all?
Hi, thanks for having us.
Thank you for being here. I know it's July. The weather's still gloomy. We've been getting a lot of rain, and I'm over it.
Yeah, same. It's time to feel like, a summer where we can go swimming again.
Right. It feels a lot like spring right now. So I'm a bit over that. But thank you for sharing some of your time with us today. I'm really excited to talk a little bit about parent advocacy. Danielle and I previously had an episode and we kind of talked a little bit about parent engagement and how that can look on the school level and also just like at the home level, and just freeing families to open up to the ideas of the different ways engagement can look. But one of the things that did come up in that conversation was advocacy. Like some families and some parents want to take their engagement a step further. And anytime we talk about advocacy, you all know your organizations, you all, and the work that you do always comes up. And so I want to spend some time today talking about parent advocacy, what that can look like. And so I want to start with level setting and kind of sharing with our listeners about your organizations and the work that you do. Julie, can you tell us a little bit about Parent Leadership Training Institute?
Yeah, sure. So I guess oftentimes this can be like really kind of an opaque or people don't really understand what it is that we do. And so I want to start with like what maybe feels real to you. So if you've ever been something where you see something in your community, you're frustrated and you're like, oh man, I wish that would change, but I don't know where to go to make change. Or if you have a lot of, I'm going to say Debbie Downers, but people in your organization, well, nothing's going to change. Don't worry about it. And you just feel alone. PLTI and Parent Power Lab are for you. So like trying to figure out like where you are, like you see problems, but you don't maybe not necessarily know the avenue or the lever or what's maybe the root cause of it. I mean, really having organizations like ours to help you kind of like, we call it like demystify all these systems and issues and things. So when you see like, I know a problem and I probably have solutions because I'm pretty closest to this solution. I know how to, we're going to help you, give you the confidence, connections, and some skills and maybe knowledge to make change. So that's really what it is. So our mission is, we train and mobilize parents to be leading advocates for children. And do you want me to say anything else? I want to kick it back over to you. But that's kind of basically our whole mission. And we have programs that kind of align with it, but that's really our purpose.
Okay, great. Can you share about Parent Power Lab?
Absolutely. So Julie really hit the nail on the head and kind of thinking about problems that exist, but not exactly knowing how to approach them. And I think when you spoke about confidence, that's one of the key pieces that kind of feels lacking in a lot of our parents. They may see issues or may feel like there are issues specific to their family, but sometimes feel intimidated or feel disempowered in really addressing those, feeling as if they're not the experts. And so our mission is to surface the power of parents to really solve those problems, and give them the confidence that they are experts on their families, on their kids, and really one of the lacking voices in the equation to how to have really wonderful schools and experiences for students.
That's awesome. So how do you all do that work of empowering parents to be advocates? How does that happen? Because it seems like a lot, to your point, families are trying to figure out like, I got this issue or this thing that I feel like needs to be fixed. I feel like I can add something to that, but I don't know where to go. It sounds like that could happen in a lot of different spaces regarding a lot of different topics. So how do you train and mobilize parents?
So I can maybe just give you a backstory on PLTI. It was founded over 30 years ago. It is probably one of the oldest and most well-researched leadership and advocacy training programs for parents. There's about, 60 to 70 locations across the country that do it. And so it was founded by parents for parents. So they actually helped develop the curriculum back in the day. But our idea is that we are sector neutral. So it's really any issue in the community we really focus on. So parents are multifaceted individuals. I mean, they probably care about health inequities as much as educational inequities, as much as criminal justice inequities. And so we want to make sure that it's open to all those things. So we're really helping you navigate the system. So this core of our work is a 21-week leadership and civics course. And people are like, dang, that's a long time. And it is 80 hours of investment of your time. But what we have found through research and the evidence and 30 years of experience is that it takes time to build community.
It does.
And the most fundamental, central, and I think this speaks to both of our organizations, is that we are community builders. Like that is the core of our work. You cannot do advocacy in isolation. That is, I hope, if anything, you can come across this podcast, I want you to feel like you should not be alone. You should not have to do it by yourself.
Yes.
And so it takes time to be in relationship with people, particularly for PLTI. We intentionally recruit people from different backgrounds and all kind of walks of life. And so it takes time to build community across difference and build trust and connection. And so not only is the curriculum, what we talk about in those 21 weeks, really robust, and there's a reason for every class, but it's also intentionality about you just don't, there's no fast way to build community.
Yeah.
So that's really our central thing. When you're in class together, when you're building community together, when you're learning all these cool skills, like what is a budget? What does the state do versus what does local government do? What does it mean to be a change agent? And how do you find, like we call it, like levers of change or the root causes? Like we do, those are all cool, fun stuff. But we also ask our parents, and when I say parents, I should say it's parent lightly, where it's like people who care about children, really. So we both have an asterisk, I think, on our parent thing, but y'all know what we're talking about. So we ask them also to do a community project. And so that's really an opportunity for them to apply what they're learning in PLTI to whatever issue they care about. So it feels like it's kind of anchors what they're learning in something, and so that they can go out. And I'm not saying that, once you graduate, you must solve that problem, because we all know these are systemic issues a lot of our parents are focused on, but really just gives you a connection to something you care about so you can keep moving in that space. And then we continue, I call like the third leg of our stool in this program, is that you have continuous connection and coaching to support you along the way. So even after graduation, we are still working with you and connecting you and working on your community project, or just connecting you to boards, leadership commissions, whatever you feel like, where you can make a difference. And that's just really the PLTI kind of work.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So our major programming is our Parent Organizing Institute, which is an 8-month training opportunity for parents to really get a clear understanding first of what I think is important is the kind of history of education, and specific to the city and the region, which I think gives some really great context, because one of the things I'm sure in many places, but definitely within our city and our history of education, is that people have some trauma connected to their own experiences, to their families' experiences that they're trying to break through. And so really understanding exactly what was happening and connecting that to their own experiences. And then being trained in classic organizing principles. So we teach them the organizing model. And the reason that I really love that model is because, to Julie's point about community building, it's based in relationships. It's based in one-on-ones and having those conversations, as opposed to what we often think of when we think of organizing, which is like mass, right? But really starting with those one-on-one conversations and building out and building collective power and doing that community building that is more sustainable, and not something that'll wash away, when things move on. So we train parents over that 8 months, and in the organizing model, and then the kind of latter end of that time is spent really focusing on identifying those issues. And one of the challenging things I think to do is to feel overwhelmed by the largeness of the things that you're trying to take on. So really getting specific about what those are, and then figuring out how to take those issues on. Number one, not by yourself, but number two, how to really find all of the little things and then continue to work on those little things. And so our parents end by creating what are called parent power circles, which can focus on very specific issues that they're trying to address, or they can focus more broadly on communities. And so that's our major programming.
One thing that I love that both of you all do in your work with parents, in your work with other organizations like ours, Show Me Casey Schools and various others, is really that root of community. Like that is felt through all of the work, the way you all network and interact with other colleagues in the space. And I think it gives a true example of, to your point, like you cannot do this work alone. We need to help each other. I think so often when we are trying to solve for something, we're just trying to, check the boxes. What are the things? What are the steps I need to complete? Right. How do I get to it and then check it off? But part of that is like building community. And I think sometimes that does escape us. We can fault some of that with the pandemic and, people being transitional and moving around and all those different things that have happened that have disrupted some of our communities that have existed. But this idea that like, hey, we get to create this. There are other people in these spaces that have similar concerns, interests. And if we tackle this together, we can really start to bring about some change. So I really value that and the work that you all do. And I appreciate that. We recently had your executive director and Parent Power Lab, Spark Bookart, on the podcast to talk about the history of the education landscape in Kansas City. And to your point around families just kind of understanding the history and unpacking some of that trauma, I think it's really interesting. I graduated high school in 2009. And so talking with Spark, it's like, it's kind of weird that I was going to school during DSEG. That's weird. Like, that's odd to say, but that was the reality, right? Yeah. But like, when you're living it, you don't think about those things. So I appreciate that you all take the time to say like, hey, I know this is a commitment and it's a long time, but we're giving you some really valuable information for some things that's one, maybe going to help you understand your own experience a little bit more, but two, equip you in a way that helps you tackle whatever those things are that you're trying to advocate for or bring about change for, or even just supporting your student day to day. I know through the events that you all have co-hosted together or with me or different things that we've all done in the community, it's allowed me to even be a better and more active parent, just every single day. So sometimes it's not even like, oh, we're going to tackle this big, huge thing and go down to Jefferson City. Like, that's great. Yeah. But also like every day, like this work is like helping me be a better parent daily, so I appreciate that. One of the things that I want to ask is, because I feel like every time I ask this question, somebody will give me a different answer. What is advocacy work? I feel like advocacy can look so many different ways. And so when you have parents in front of you and you're trying to explain that, how do you explain that to parents, what advocacy is?
Do you want to go first on this one?
Sure, I can. I think the important thing that stands out to me about advocacy is kind of what the outcome is. And what I know the outcome is not is that we are passing on specific ways of thinking, specific ideas. We're not passing on our information to other people to take that charge on. What it feels like to me more so is that we are unearthing from within people the things that already exist. And we're giving them tools. And again, that word confidence to be able to say that I have the right and I have a responsibility even to act on these things that I feel in my gut. I feel like we over analyze things on paper. We don't always listen to the things that intuitively we know to be the case. And I think that what advocacy does is gives you the tools that the kind of worlds that we're operating in are using to say, here is how you prove what's going on in your gut. And so it is really giving people those resources, giving them whatever tools that they need to carry on the messages, the beliefs, the movements that exist within them.
Yeah, I wrote down, it's like, same. I knew she would nail it. But yeah, as parents confidently claim their voice and power to make change. That's what advocacy is that, you feel power. Nobody has to tell you you're powerful. You know you are.
Yeah.
And you feel good. And so when we talk about our programs, are capacity building programs that are transformational. So when I talk about ripples of impact, so PLTI has a theory of change. Again, we're part of this national network. And so NYU built this theory of change, and they talk about ripples of impact. So it is like you build your capacity, knowledge, skills, connections, confidence. That makes you have a personal transformation. And in that personal transformation, you start, you built this community of other people that walked alongside you because you transformed together. You start taking collective action to solve inequities. You start seeing things. And then the next ripple for me, so that collective action is a beautiful ripple, right? And then the like kind of next one would be that public officials and civic leaders start seeing parents as assets. And then for us, that's what we talk about. The final ripple is like invigorating democracy. Like we're messing things up and we're making it better. Like I feel like that's because it's sometimes hard when you're like, what is capacity building? What is that word? That's what it means. Like you change. Because of your change, you're able to come out and do so many things. And for me, it's so hard to quantify. I don't ever want, because we're talking about people. Right. People aren't widgets. Right. And I'm not going to be like, oh, this person did X, Y thing. So I'm very conscious that I don't want PLTI to be measured by what parents do, because it's not about what you do, it's about who you are. And that transformation has so many ripples of impact. So somebody who just, when they're like, man, I feel lit the fire within me, they may do several things. Right. And I can't just narrow them down to be like, well, they got on the school board, so I guess I made a difference. Right? Because that's not what they're about. So I'm sure I can share some things that amazing impact they did, but I think it's at the center of our work is that we value the people for their wholeness. Like they're a whole person in what they do. And so however they come out and they feel personally changed, for me, that's parent advocate, right? Yeah. I know I feel confident in my power and my voice. I'm like, I don't care what you do. Now that you have that for me, now you're a parent advocate or parent leader, what we call them a lot of times.
Sure. That's awesome. Because I know a lot of times parents do feel intimidated, right? Like we talked about like the things that are on paper and how certain systems work and things like that. And so, I can get a little uncut, okay? I'm just like, listen, we got to show people how to play the game. Like first I have to show you what the game is. Like, here's the system. Here's what it is. Here's what we are supposed to do on paper. Let's learn the procedures and expectations for things. But also, let's build that confidence so we can come in and start to wreck some stuff that needs to be wrecked. Because sometimes that just needs to happen, right? Some systems we have to shake up and say, this isn't working for us anymore, and it needs to change. So I understand how it's supposed to work. Yep. But what I'm saying is it's not working. So how do we go in and change it? Yeah. Could you all share with me examples of just some highlights of what you've seen with confidence building in parents and caregivers? And then we obviously don't want to quantify the work that they're doing, but I think it's important to share with others where their power could lead them. And so just anything that like sticks out to you on a parent that's like, oh my God, I've completely seen them transform through this program and they are making a mark.
I have one, several of them, but one, she spoke we had a little taste of PLTI this Saturday. And so this is what she spoke, and I was like, you're giving us way too much credit. But I was like, I don't think you realize how awesome you are. But I think she also knows they're awesome. But that was the thing where she may have felt shut down first, and like, I don't, just frustrated with the world. Nothing's going away, but really seeing that PLTI helped her feel like there was a community and possibility. And so I think that is a big shift I see a lot with parents. It's like, we call it like, well, I'm just a parent. Like they'll often say, well, I'm just a parent. Like the school knows how to teach reading. Like I'm just a parent. Something's wrong with my kid, but and so that change of like, I'm no longer just a parent, like I'm a parent leader is a huge shift that I've seen a lot of them. And so how that manifests is like she started her own nonprofit. She's now on the board of a charter school. She's now a speaker nationally for several things. Our national organization, has seen her out and about, and they're like, we want her to come and speak and share her story. So she's now, and then other people, she's encouraging other people to do Parent Power Lab or PLTI and like really find it. So she's building people that now are also, again, ripples. Like she's now affecting other people and how she's showing up. She's been a community wellness ambassador. She's like just doing the things because she knows she can. And I think that's really powerful. Like some of the topics, and I think, a lot of them work on it, you know. I mean, actually, you go ahead and I'll share any more topics. Yeah.
Well, no problem. Yeah, no, I really appreciate the point that you made earlier in seeing kind of the transformation happen in so many different ways in each parent, and that being a very kind of personal thing, personal shift. But I think one of the biggest ways that we start to see that transformation happen as we're starting to have these conversations is that first, kind of to your point, they figure out what the system is, right? And there's this like aha moment, and then there's this anger, right?
They get real mad.
It's like, wait a minute, right? And I think that step is very important because the step after that is figuring out how I can become a part of changing what this looks like. And so I think one of the things that I've loved that I've seen in each of our parents is that kind of step of anger, and then their personal commitment to saying, this is how this is going to look different for me. And I think the kind of best outcome of that is, of course, our Parent Power Circle leaders who are leading teams of people, right? Really building that collective power. So bringing people into the same knowledge that they have experienced. And so passing that on. So when you talk about those ripples, definitely kind of reverberating out, I think has been really important. But then also just the conversations that they're having with one another, with other people, I think is creating a huge level of engagement and kind of shaking things up, starting conversations that I feel like it's been too quiet for too long around certain things. And so there are a number of parents that I can think of who have become much more engaged as a result of this. Some of our parents came and were already engaged, and I think just giving them additional language, additional resources to extend further. So like you said, I don't really want to take the credit solely because we're just giving it a frame, I think. So, yeah.
So we talked a little bit about building community and the ripples that are created. I think that that's a lot of what we see on the community level. I do want to zoom in a little bit when we start to think about advocacy on the family student level, like my children in my household or the children in this school that I'm currently a part of, and how that can look. I know we previously mentioned, sometimes families not really coming in with that confidence and feeling like, I'm a leader, I'm an advocate. And I feel like sometimes parents try to step into that role in school spaces and sometimes feel discouraged. What would your response be to the parent, but also to the individuals that may be causing that discouragement?
Yeah. So I think to the parent specifically, I would say, kudos to you. Applause for trying to do something because getting to that point of movement is challenging in and of itself. And that I'm sure you're exhausted because when you're doing this alone, it's not sustainable. It becomes exhausting. So, we're here to support. There are like-minded people. Telling your story makes you feel less isolated and sharing those stories. There's power in that. So just really kind of like inviting them into the conversation in the group. To the individuals that are doing the discouraging, one of the things that I really try to keep in mind is that we are all swimming in the same soup. We are all a product of these same systems. And so often whether or not they end up in the right place with their actions, they're doing it as a result of some of the same trauma that they've experienced and thinking that this is the way that this needs to happen. And so I would also invite them into the conversation, right? To kind of find the shared interest, to find their self-interest, because I think that when you start to have these conversations and really get down to what people care about, then you can start to figure out how this looks different and how you can get on the same page.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the same thing what I've found, like with this at the school level, is it's oftentimes that we jump to trying to solve problems without building relationships. And so it's like trying to create space to be together when there's no agenda. Helps build trust, because most of the work when we're helping provide, I guess, some parent leader consulting. I don't know how you want to parent expertise in these spaces. The first thing oftentimes is that is the biggest problem is that there's a lack of trust and a lack of relationship. But we are hardwired for relationship. We are hardwired for connection. And so I think that is really hard when you have to, probably as a school leader, I mean, you have all these performance tasks you have to do.
Right.
And just having a meeting to have a meeting seems kind of
just to be together.
Just for beingness. I don't know if that's a word, is hard. But I noticed that that's and I'm not speaking from like an expertise. I'm speaking from somebody who's done it wrong. And that, so I've been in grass top spaces where you just like plow through and like, let's get to object, and then I'm like wondering why it didn't work. Right. But oftentimes happens and you blame the parents or you blame the community. Well, it's their fault because they didn't want to come.
Or assuming they're not engaged. Or
that lack of engagement is lack of interest. And that's not always that's not the case. I mean, again, it took me learning it through PLTI to realize lack of engagement does not mean lack of interest in things. And so it's just really, but it's hard to build community and connection. And I think the first step, I was talking to some parent leaders this morning about this, and they said the first step that these systems could do is acknowledge what they've done wrong. That goes a tremendous way of building trust. Last year, when we tried this is how we messed up. And this is what we heard from you, and we want to say we're sorry. So but if you cannot acknowledge what you did that was wrong, or a system that wasn't, it's really hard to build trust because we don't believe that like you don't know, right? And so I think if the systems can really deeply have conversations where they're hearing parents, providing that feedback loop and saying, this is how we messed up. We're acknowledging that, and this is how we want to move forward next year because we truly want to build trust with you. It goes a long way. And then for the parents, y'all need to come to Parent Power Lab or PLTI, and we'll be your community so you're not alone, right? And then helping you kind of like problem solve and get you the who's you knows as much as you what you knows.
That's amazing. And that's a great segue. Could you both share how families could stay connected to your organizations and or get involved? I know both of you all are gearing up for the cohorts for the 23-24 school year. So if you could share information on how families can get connected to your programming, that would be amazing.
Sure. So the first place that I would send parents is to our website, which is parentpowerlab.com, and to sign up for our mailing list, which means you're going to get alerts about everything that we do. Awesome. But we also encourage parents to follow us on any of our social platforms. We're on Instagram at parent.power.lab. On pretty much everything else is just Parent Power Lab. So that is LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. And then I strongly encourage parents when they find those spaces to come to our events. We have a number of different events and smaller trainings are in the works. So we encourage you to come there because there's nothing quite like having that experience of sharing those conversations and really feeling the power in the room, right? The energy of that.
I've been there.
Yep. That's great. Yes. I'm very excited about when they have the smaller ones. So we'll be promoting those as well. Because I was like, I just do 21 weeks. There's nothing short about this one. So our applications are open. So for cohort 6 of PLTI, we are just did our first week of interviews. I'm really excited. So the best way to get a hold of us is through our website, and that's actually where our application is at pltikc.org, that you can find out all about our schedules, all the classes that we'll be learning, when we're meeting. We meet Wednesday evenings, for example, and so you can make sure it fits with your schedule. And and we provide childcare and interpretation, and if you need transportation supports, and we provide meals. So you just show up as your best self, and we'll take care of everything else for you. And our programs are both free for parents to participate.
Yes, that's a great point. They're both free.
Thank you
And
for
you all
saying
do
that,
a great job of your events and everything, having childcare and dinner and things like that available. It's amazing. I'm really excited. I want to share this out from the rooftops because I hope that, we have as many parents participating as we can and continue to have that ripple effect. For our listeners who want more information about Parent Power Lab and PLTI, we'll have the information for the websites and the applications and the mailing list all linked in our show notes. I want to thank you all for joining us today and sharing. Thank you so much for the work that you both do. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us today. Until next time. Show Me KC Schools is committed to providing you with vital information that supports you while you support your child on their educational journey. Connect with us on social media at SMKCS and on YouTube at Show Me KC Schools and on all your favorite podcast platforms.